Hey everyone, Jason here, aspiring entrepreneur and digital marketing consultant, and in this content marketing tutorial, you're going to learn 8 foundational content marketing tips to jumpstart your content marketing or take your current content to the next level. Now, these 8 tips are the exact same foundational strategies I've been using to grow this small channel by over 20% consistently month over month, and by simply watching this video until the end, you're going to have everything you need to build and put together a solid content marketing plan to draw in new fans, followers, and most importantly, customers. So to kick things off, number 1 is having a clear value path. And this is where the development of your strategic content plan comes in. Because it's one thing to just make a bunch of content. It's another thing to have a specific plan or process for having your content as a piece of your overall marketing strategy. And so what this means simply is making sure that every single piece of content you have pulls your ideal customer closer to doing business with you. The whole point of content marketing is to gain attention to your brand, your products or services, and move your ideal customers closer to purchasing your products and services, which most likely means you have to educate them and show that you can deliver the value that you promise in your products or services by delivering just as much, if not more, value to them in your content. And if you want to learn more about this specific process of how to put together a content marketing sales funnel, there's a link in the description to a full video on exactly how to do just that. Now, tip number 2 has to do with promotion, and this is a little counterintuitive. When it comes to creating content, it's really easy to get sucked in and focused on the actual content that you're making, whether it's a YouTube video, a podcast, or just a blog on WordPress. What's often overlooked, though, is the promotion strategy. And this is something that you should choose ideally before you start developing your content marketing calendar. And this is pretty much, are you going to be doing search engine optimization if you're doing YouTube videos or blog? Are you going to become a social media advocate? Or are you just going to use paid ads? It's really important to choose one specific strategy and how you're going to get traffic, because posting a great piece of content doesn't mean eyeballs and attention are going to come to it. You have to go do the work to promote your post or promote your video or promote your podcast across all different channels. And it's important that you choose one channel because you want to get really good at that. And make sure you stick around to the end because this actually ties into tip number 8. So now that you know what promotion strategy you're going to do, the next couple of tips have to do with the content piece itself. So tip number 3 is avoid the fear of golden nugget hoarding. And this is the fear of giving away too much information in your content. And this occurs where you're writing a great post or you're putting together a great video or podcast, and you look at it and you go, man, I'm giving away so much. People probably won't want to buy my course, or they won't want to hire me. They'll be able to do everything themselves. And that is a good sign that you're doing a good job with your content marketing. However, this is still a legitimate fear. So there are a couple of things with this tip. Number 1 is what you can do with your content is have your content built around a separate topic. For example, this channel does a lot of marketing videos. However, there are no videos on the channel that really dive into copywriting. So what I could do is I could continue making videos like this one talking about all about content marketing. And then for my courses or the consulting that we do, it could be all about copywriting. And as you can see, they're in the same vein. The same person who wants to know about content marketing will eventually have to have some copywriting done to actually sell their products or services. And so it's a natural progression. So that's one way to get over the fear of giving away too much. Now, the second way is just understanding that people are always going to want to pay for things to be done easier. So if you're offering a service, there is no amount of content you could give away for free that would ever replace the service that you provide. Because one of the things you could do with your content is be extremely detailed, show how much work it actually is, and by the end of that piece of content, all of a sudden your ideal customer looks at it and goes, wow, there's no way I want to do all this work. I'm happy I understand it, but now I have a bigger appreciation, and now I want to hire you because I just read your great piece of content and I trust that you know what you're doing. You've just educated me on the process. Let's get on the phone. I want to hire you. Obviously, that's the ideal one. And then number 3 has to do with if you're offering a product, and that is the psychology of sales is your customers are always going to assume that you offer more in your paid courses. So even if your content is on subject Y and your product is subject Y, you always have the ability to go the extra mile or even add access to yourself, like a live Q&A call once or twice a month to that product that you offer, and that will instantly ensure that there's never an incongruency of, wow, I'm getting the same content in the paid product as I got with the free content. So that is tip number 3. And speaking of giving away too much information in your content, tip number 4 has to do with filling the gap. So when you go to create your piece of content, you want to think about where your ideal fan, customer, or reader is now and the result that they're looking for. And there's a gap in between that. And the gap should be filled by the piece of content that you make. And so one of the things you really want to focus on and do is make sure that every piece of content you create solves a real problem for your ideal customer. So they are at one point and now you want to get them to point B. So they're at point A, they're at point B. Your content is what bridges the gap, and that's how you always ensure that you're serving the proper user intent, because when someone comes to your blog, they come to your podcast, they're watching your video, they want to achieve something. They want a specific result. So make sure that your content focuses on that result and delivers on that result. And that's why the previous step was so important, as to not hold anything back. Because if you hold something back, you're not going to completely fill that gap, and they're going to go find another piece of content that actually fills that gap. And that actually leads me into tip number 5, which is content linking. When you're trying to fill that gap, there is potentially a lot of information to deliver. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to make a 2,500 word blog post or a 3-hour video to explain everything. So one of the things you can do is leverage the power of content linking. And this is something that's so great. When you're looking at your content calendar, you can actually plan this out. Now, if you noticed in tip number 1, I referenced a video link in the description to how to put together a content marketing sales funnel. I could have just as easily spent 5 to 10 minutes inside of this video talking about it. But instead, I focused on the 8 tips that we're talking about now. And for those people who want to learn more, I linked to it. And I think that's a perfect example of how you can really build this nice content web and make sure that all of your pieces of content can stand on their own. They can fill that gap and provides extra value because you link to your other pieces of content to ensure that that gap is really filled for every single person. Now, the last 3 tips have to do with you as an entrepreneur or content marketer in general. And so tip number 6 has to deal with choosing one medium. So throughout this entire video, I've been talking about blogs, I've been talking about videos, I've been talking about podcasts. And in terms of being an entrepreneur and a marketer and the master and commander of your business, it's really important to choose one medium to focus on and perfect as a skill, because content marketing is only going to get more and more competitive. And so if you're trying to do a video and do the writing and do a podcast all at the same time, chances are you're going to hit burnout. And so what I really strongly suggest you do with this tip is to focus on one medium so you can become really, really good at it. And then my second to last tip for you, tip number 7, is to hire someone to do the syndication of your content. So let's use YouTube as an example. Let's say you choose YouTube as your medium or video, you're really going to focus on that. Well, if you start splitting your time into trying to transform it into a blog post and try to transform it into a podcast, you're going to dilute the time you spend on creating new videos, and you're going to dilute the time you spend on becoming better at creating those videos. Now, the same applies if you're focused on podcasts or you're focused on blog posts. And so what you can do is hire someone to do that syndication. So with the YouTube video example, you'd hire someone to turn it into a podcast. You'd hire someone to turn it into a blog post. And this is where you get leverage on your time, because now you have one piece of content and you're getting 3 pieces of content out of it. But what's really important is to not try and spread yourself too thin. And that's my final tip for you. Tip number 8 is to stay focused. It is so easy to look at all the things you could be doing and try to do the syndication, try to play around with and become experts with multiple social media channels. But really what it comes down to is one thing, one focus, one medium, and making sure you create that best piece of content possible that doesn't hold any golden nuggets back, that you have a clear path to promotion. You know that this piece of content is going to help pull in new fans and customers. You know you're going to be filling that gap, and you know that you have an overarching strategy to link your content together. And that cannot be done without being extremely focused on making sure each piece of content you create is the best piece of content you can. And remember that content is an asset. It's not something like paid ads where you kind of just throw it out and you see what happens. You spend a lot of time on it, and then following tip number 2, you promote it, you make sure that it's an asset that continues to bring in new fans and customers to you. So that does it for my top 8 tips. I'm curious if you have anything to add to this list. If you do, go ahead and comment below, and make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because over on my channel, I'm documenting the entire process on what it takes to build an online business from scratch. And of course, content marketing and generating leads is just one small piece of the overall picture of building a business from nothing. So if you got some value out of this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions or anything to add to this list. And as always, keep building the business you love. Take care.